Chapter 9. The Happy Life. When it all comes together, what is the life of the Stoic supposed to look like? A grim one of despising fate and courageously enduring hardship? Sometimes, but that is not all. By not following the crowd and choosing a more strenuous path in life, the Stoic should actually wind up the happiest person.
When we are considering a happy life, you cannot answer me as though, after a division of the house, this view has most supporters, because for that very reason, it is the worse of the two. Matters do not stand so well with mankind that the majority should prefer the better course. The more people do a thing, the worse it is likely to be. Let us therefore inquire, not what is most commonly done, but what is best for us to do, and what will establish us in the possession of undying happiness, not what is approved of by the vulgar, the worst possible exponents of truth.
So what is that best life that will lead us to virtue and its byproduct, happiness? It is putting the whole system together. It is making philosophy your priority every day and struggling uphill against vice. It means keeping the dichotomy of control always in your mind and living with wisdom. It means going among the people of the world like they are your extended family. It means refusing to be apart from virtue. The byproduct of living this way is a high happiness, which comes from being free from fear and want, while being properly connected to the people around you and the world, and keeping your mind focused on wholesome things.
Thus, it will come to the same thing if I say, the highest good is a mind which despises the accidents of fortune and takes pleasure in virtue. Or, it is an unconquerable strength of mind, knowing the world well, gentle in its dealings, showing great courtesy and consideration for those with whom it is brought into contact. Or we may choose to define it by calling that man happy who knows good and bad only in the form of good or bad minds, who worships honor and is satisfied with his own virtue, who is neither puffed up by good fortune nor cast down by evil fortune, who knows no other good than that which he is able to bestow upon himself, whose real pleasure lies in despising pleasures. If you choose to pursue this digression further, you can put this same idea into many other forms without impairing or weakening its meaning. For what prevents our saying that a happy life consists in a mind which is free, upright, undaunted and steadfast, beyond the influence of fear or desire, which thinks nothing good except honor and nothing bad except shame, and regards everything else as a mass of mean details which can neither add anything to nor take anything away from the happiness of life, but which come and go without either increasing or diminishing the highest good. A man of these principles, whether he will or no, must be accompanied by a continual cheerfulness, a high happiness, which comes indeed from on high, because he delights in what he has, and desires no greater pleasures than those which his home affords. Is he not right in allowing these to turn the scale against petty, ridiculous and short-lived movements of his wretched body? On the day on which he becomes proof against pleasure, he also becomes proof against pain. See, on the other hand, how evil and guilty a slavery the man is forced to serve who is dominated in turn by pleasures and pains, those most untrustworthy and passionate of masters. We must, therefore, escape from them into freedom. This nothing will bestow upon us save contempt of fortune. But if we attain to this, then there will dawn upon us those invaluable blessings, the repose of a mind that is at rest in a safe haven, its lofty imaginings, its great and steady delight at casting out errors and learning to know the truth, its courtesy and its cheerfulness, in all of which we shall take delight, not regarding them as good things, but as proceeding from the proper good of man.
It is important to note that this happiness of the Stoic comes in opposition to pleasure, not in embracing it. Pleasure depends on fortune, which makes it the opposite of secure. The happiness of the Stoic is built on the unshakable foundation of virtue alone.
Why do you put together two things which are unlike and even incompatible one with another? Virtue is a lofty quality, sublime, royal, unconquerable, untiring, Pleasure is low, slavish, weakly, perishable. Its haunts and homes are the brothel and the tavern. You will meet virtue in the temple, the marketplace, the senate house, manning the walls, covered with dust, sunburnt, horny-handed. You will find pleasure skulking out of sight, seeking for shady nooks at the public baths, hot chambers and places which dread the visits of the aedile, soft, effeminate, reeking of wine and perfumes, pale or perhaps painted and made up with cosmetics. The highest good is immortal, it knows no ending and does not admit of either satiety or regret, for a right-thinking mind never alters or becomes hateful to itself, nor do the best things ever undergo any change. But pleasure dies at the very moment when it charms us most. It has no great scope, and therefore it soon cloys and wearies us, and fades away as soon as its first impulse is over. Indeed, we cannot depend upon anything whose nature is to change.
The Stoic does not practice philosophy to obtain happiness, but to pursue virtue alone. She is a jealous lover who will not permit rivals for her affection. Happiness comes as a byproduct of virtue, as a blessing bestowed upon those who gain her favour. It only works in that direction. The intentions of the practitioner are of crucial importance here, so it cannot be faked or obtained through shortcuts. You will be happy, but only after you become good. If you try to pursue happiness itself, you will neither be happy nor good.
But, says our adversary, you yourself only practice virtue because you hope to obtain some pleasure from it. In the first place, even though virtue may afford us pleasure, still we do not seek after her on that account, for she does not bestow this but bestows this to boot, nor is this the end for which she labours, but her labour wins this also, although it be directed to another end. As in a tilled field when ploughed for corn, some flowers are found amongst it, and yet, though these posies may charm the eye, all this labour was not spent in order to produce them. The man who sowed the field had another object in view. He gained this over and above it. So pleasure is not the reward or the cause of virtue, but comes in addition to it. Nor do we choose virtue because she gives us pleasure, but she gives us pleasure also if we choose her. The highest good lies in the act of choosing her, and in the attitude of the noblest minds, which when once it has fulfilled its function, and established itself within its own limits, has attained to the highest good and needs nothing more. For there is nothing outside of the whole any more than there is anything beyond the end. You are mistaken, therefore, when you ask me what it is on account of which I seek after virtue, for you are seeking for something above the highest. Do you ask what I seek from virtue? I answer herself, for she has nothing better. She is her own reward. Does this not appear great enough when I tell you that the highest good is an unyielding strength of mind, wisdom, magnanimity, sound judgment, freedom, harmony, beauty? Do you still ask me for something greater, of which these may be regarded as the attributes? Why do you talk of pleasures to me? I am seeking to find what is good for man, not for his belly. Why cattle and whales have larger ones than he.
How to deal with critics. Seneca takes some time to prepare us for the pushback we will face once we start down this different path. To become good, one must necessarily live in hypocrisy at the start, knowing how one should live without actually being able to live that way, which is likely to draw the bitter attention of those who will be threatened by your desire to improve. Bad men want no one to be good.
You talk one way, objects our adversary, and live another. You most spiteful of creatures, you who always show the bitterest hatred to the best of men. This reproach was flung at Plato, at Epicurus, at Zeno. For all these declared how they ought to live, not how they did live. I speak of virtue, not of myself, and when I blame vices, I blame my own first of all. When I have the power, I shall live as I ought to do. Spite, however deeply steeped in venom, shall not keep me back from what is best. That poison itself with which you bespatter others, with which you choke yourselves, shall not hinder me from continuing to praise that life which I do not indeed lead, but which I know I ought to lead, from loving virtue, and from following after her, albeit a long way behind her, and with halting gait.
Seneca continues in the next book, reminding us not to be too hard on ourselves either. We ought to speak boldly and then strive to live up to our bold words. We will not be able to do it right away, or even after a long effort, but that must not prevent us from aiming for the right target.
You have therefore no grounds for misunderstanding the honourable, brave, and spirited language which you hear from those who are studying wisdom. And first of all observe this, that a student of wisdom is not the same thing as a man who has made himself perfect in wisdom. The former will say to you, "In my talk I express the most admirable sentiments, yet I am still weltering amid countless ills. You must not force me to act up to my rules. At the present time I am forming myself, moulding my character and striving to rise myself to the height of a great example. If I should ever succeed in carrying out all that I have set myself to accomplish, you may then demand that my words and deeds should correspond."
The value of a Stoic disposition. Some people are more naturally suited for Stoicism, possessing traits like calmness, discipline, and openness to new perspectives. These qualities can certainly smooth the path towards wisdom. However, it is important to recognize that Stoicism is a journey accessible to all, regardless of one's natural disposition. The road to tranquility might be more challenging for some, but it remains a journey with the same destination for everyone: peace of mind.
Suppose that two buildings have been erected, unlike as to their foundations, but equal in height and in grandeur. One is built on faultless ground, and the process of erection goes right ahead. In the other case, the foundations have exhausted the building materials, for they have been sunk into soft and shifting ground, and much labour has been wasted in reaching the solid rock. As one looks at both of them, one sees clearly what progress the former has made, but the larger and more difficult part of the latter is hidden. So, with men's dispositions, some are pliable and easy to manage, but others have to be laboriously wrought out by hand, so to speak, and are wholly employed in the making of their own foundations. I should accordingly deem more fortunate the man who has never had any trouble with himself. But the other, I feel, has deserved better of himself, who has won a victory over the meanness of his own nature, and has not gently led himself, but has wrestled his way to wisdom.
Historically, many esteemed Stoic figures were not innately virtuous. Cato, for instance, was a drinker. George Washington battled a fiery temper. Seneca himself was one of the most ambitious men in Rome. The value lies not in the absence of personal flaws, but in the relentless effort to overcome them. This struggle against our inherent imperfections only magnifies the nobility of our achievements in Stoicism. Therefore, we should embrace the effort required to fortify our philosophical foundations with pride, not shame. The endeavour to grow wiser, despite our natural tendencies, is a testament to our commitment to personal improvement and the Stoic path. In Of a Happy Life, Seneca lays out a blueprint for Stoic happiness, distinct from the common notions of pleasure and success. This happiness stems from a life committed to virtue, where true joy is found in the pursuit of wisdom, ethical living, and self-mastery. It is about embracing life's challenges with a calm mind, finding joy in our connections with others, and focusing on the things that truly matter. Seneca emphasizes that true contentment comes from within, from a life lived in harmony with our highest principles, not from fleeting external successes or pleasures.